So if you haven't scanned the QR code yet, go ahead and do that while it's still up on the screen. And then I'm Liz in Career Services at Walsh, and I want to thank everyone for being here, for taking the time out of your day to join this. I'm so excited for this presentation. And I want to introduce Nicole Winters. She's a recruiter at BDO, and she's actually out of state, but she recruits for the Detroit office as well. So we are thrilled to have her here today. And I'm going to let her go ahead. Just as we're going through this, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, and I'll kind of monitor that and just interrupt as we go along.
Thanks, Liz. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right. So, yeah, the QR code, I hope everyone had a chance to scan that, but if not, Liz is going to provide me your emails after this so I can reach out. And also on the screen here, you'll see my contact information. So if for some reason that QR code didn't work for you, you can always connect with me through email or my LinkedIn, which is just Nicole Winters. So a little bit about myself. So at BDO, the roles that I recruit for are accounting internships as well as our entry-level associate opportunities. And I recruit for both Detroit and Pittsburgh. So a little bit too, I wanted to mention prior to working for BDO, I was a recruiter for a staffing agency called Robert Half. And in that role, I recruited for senior level finance and accounting roles. So that could be senior accountants, controllers, all the way up to CFO. I've worked with a variety of candidates at all levels of their careers, and I'm happy to share with you some of my advice when looking for a role, as well as just networking in general. So at stage of your career, networking, it never really goes away. It's going to be important where you're at now as a student or graduate all the way to whatever point you're at in your career. So, like I said, contact information is right here. And I welcome everyone to connect with me on LinkedIn afterwards. So feel free to send me a message after the presentation. And this is just the agenda for today. So I am going to talk a little bit about BDO, just a quick introduction about our firm, and then we'll talk about personal branding and elevator pitches. That kind of all goes along with networking. So the personal branding is really going to be important for building up what you're wanting to convey during a networking event. So we'll be going through all of that a little bit more and talking about what an elevator pitch is and how you can create your own elevator pitch to be effective for you. And also, I know Liz had mentioned that you can pop questions into the chat. So feel free to interrupt me at any time if there are questions. I would love for this to be a discussion where if there are things that you would have questions about, let me know. And I have even put a couple of slides in that have frequently asked questions that kind of build into that. So. All right, so let's get started. So who is BDO? I get asked this question a lot. What does BDO stand for? So I put the actual name here. So this slide, it's showing, it's made up of the initials of the three founding European firms. BDO is the 5th largest firm globally. And this map shows all of the areas shaded in gray represent countries where there is a BDO office. So we have over 1,700 offices across the world. Specifically in the US, you can see here where we have offices. So I had mentioned that I work out of the Detroit and Pittsburgh location, but if you're not maybe from either of those areas, maybe home to you is Philadelphia, or it could be somewhere else, check out this map to see where we have offices. A fun fact, our national office is in Chicago. So I actually just got back from the Chicago office a few weeks ago for a training, and that was the first time I was there. So it was really cool to see our national office and meet some of my fellow recruiters that work all across the country for the first time. So that was a unique experience. But yeah, you can see here we have over 70 offices across the country. So our BDO Detroit office is actually located in Troy, Michigan. I wanted to note that because sometimes as I'm talking to candidates, they think we're located in Detroit, the downtown area. So we're actually, yeah, in Troy, and you can see the address is right there. So our internships, I'll talk a little bit more towards the end about opportunities that we have available, but all of our internships would be a hybrid mix of being in the office and then also having the capability to work from home. So just a side note there. And we do have our three main core service areas, our tax, assurance, and advisory. Assurance also can be interchanged with audit. So we'll go over and just take a look at each of our managing partners for those service areas. So Matt Manowski is our tax office managing partner, and we have Kevin Patterson is our audit office managing partner. And Vincent Mercator is our principal for advisory. He works with valuation and capital market analysis. And then as we're looking at the size of our firm and what kind of clients we take on, you can see here that BDO falls right in the middle. So this graph shows we have our local regional firms, which they handle clients that are more in that 20 million range, whereas BDO falls under the 50 million to 1 billion range. So we're well suited to help clients that are in that mid-market level. And then Big Four, you can see, typically deals with clients that are more of the Fortune 1000 companies. So they're bringing in 1 billion in revenue. I'd say for BDO, the companies that the clients that we serve are going to be larger privately owned companies. They may have multi-locations, including international. So and the reason I'm bringing this up, whenever you are looking for the right fit for you, you want to be thinking about the size of the firm and the types of clients that they handle to see, what's going to be the right fit. So it may be the Big Four, it could be a local regional firm, or you might look for something more in the middle. And BDO offers the resources and opportunities for learning of a large firm, but we do have that smaller firm feel. So what I mean by that is every intern will be assigned a buddy as well as a career advisor. So we really want you to have access to resources as you're going through your internship with us, and even being able to meet those partners that I mentioned. Kevin, Matt, and Vincent are all very connected with our interns and our associates. So you would be having exposure, to a number of different people within the firm and really building those relationships. Okay, so that was my spiel on BDO. So if anyone has questions afterwards about opportunities, please feel free to ask. But I know that for this presentation, we really want to focus in on networking and how we can really build up our brand and make sure that we're doing it effectively. So we'll talk more about what a personal brand is. When it comes to your own life, you are marketing your personal brand every single day, whether you realize it or not. The work you do and the friendships you have, the connections you make for others, are an experience you enable others to consume. And when marketing yourself, you want to consciously build that experience so that you can effectively get what you want in return from your life. So really, it is just a culmination of everything. Your brand is your professional image. So what you're putting out there whether it's on social media, and there will be a couple of slides just talking about that, especially LinkedIn is going to come up in this presentation. So the images that you're putting out there, it also consists of your reputation, values, mission, integrity, and how you treat yourself and others. If you aren't making an effort to brand yourself, someone else will based on their perspective of you. So a couple of things to note whenever you are going into any sort of networking event, some things to consider. These are just pointers that I would tell anyone would be looking someone directly in the eye whenever you first meet them. You know, that eye contact is important. A firm handshake. So during COVID, I know we got away from the handshake a little bit here, but I think that a handshake is still appropriate. And you can always ask someone too, is it okay if I shake your hand? I know with COVID, we were trying not to do that. So it's still considered something though that I would say is pretty standard. And then we'll also be going through professional attire and what that looks like, as well as just whenever you do have any sort of event or networking, appointment to show up on time. That is huge, making sure that you're prompt and following through with being on time. And then a couple of things that we forget to do, just remember to smile whenever you are talking to people. I know sometimes we can get nervous and maybe it's hard to remember just to try and make sure you are being pleasant and having, a happy demeanor as you're speaking with individuals. Okay, so how do we actually define our personal brand? What are some things that you can do right now to specifically go through and develop what you want others to see of you? So there are 6 steps here for doing this. And the first one is you want to look at what is your goal. So define your overall aspirations. Is it to become known as the state tax guru in Michigan? Maybe the benefits and healthcare know-it-all, the first female managing partner, CFO at your firm. You'll want to think about what's important to you and what you're basically trying to achieve. And you'll want this information in the back of your mind, not only as you manage your brand, but also as you create and tweak your social media accounts. Number 2 is conducting your research. So look at those who have made it to where you want to be. What are they doing? What can you learn from them? Both right and maybe not so right. Who are your biggest competitors and what are they doing? 3 would be determine your brand attributes. So what do you want your personal brand to convey? What adjectives do you want people to associate you with and why? So think about some of the attributes that you would like others to really know you for. Is it hardworking, determined, tech savvy? Those are just some examples to be thinking about. And then know your audience. So how do people currently perceive you, right? How large is the gap between the current you and the person you want others to be? Or I'm sorry, want others to perceive you to be, and what needs to change and why. Then you're going to create your game plan. So include all aspects of this, not just social media, but be looking at intangible and tangible characteristics, verbal and nonverbal communication. And finally, manage your brand. So be proactive, be authentic, make sure the things you want people to know about you are being reinforced by your actions. So make sure your LinkedIn picture looks like you, your tweets you post sound like you. Just be authentic. Any questions on personal brand? And as you can see, so this is actually a picture I have put up on my LinkedIn showing this was at a recruiting event at a career fair, but you can see pretty clearly it is very much BDO branded. I'm sending the message that, hey, I'm here to help you find a job. I am a recruiter. So that's what I'm trying to put out there on my social media. And going along with the social media, so now more than ever, we are using social media in our daily life, whether it's to post our latest thoughts on Twitter or share our vacation photos on Instagram. Your social media presence, it can easily be accessed by friends, family, colleagues, and even future employers. So while it may be tempting to post a picture from that party you went to last night, it's best to think about who may stumble upon that post. And we'll talk about that more in the coming slides, but as you're building your brand, make sure that your brand is staying consistent with who you are. So just as a warning, there are employers that are going to check your social media account. In fact, according to a Harris poll, 70% of employers check some form of social media. And it's typically what it's called is a social media screening. So I'll say this, not every company does this, but if companies are doing this, it's important to be mindful of what you're putting out there. A social media screening is usually done prior to employment when a candidate is applying for a job. So it involves researching a prospect's social media profiles and their activity, including what they post, what they like and comment on. So some of the platforms that are likely to be checked are LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, and WhatsApp. So you can see here, I mean, for the most part, I would say LinkedIn definitely. As a recruiter, I'm looking at LinkedIn profiles. As for the other items, I don't necessarily check for Instagram and Twitter, but that doesn't mean that other recruiters are not looking at those platforms. So it's best to probably set them as private, but even still, someone could still potentially access your profile, even if it is set to private. So it's best to just be mindful of when you're going through and thinking about your brand. I would definitely refrain from posting photos. These ones in particular would be to avoid. So party photos, if there's any sort of underage drinking going on, you'll want to, be mindful of that. I would not post those photos, anything inappropriate or explicit, illegal activities, offensive gestures. So I know those maybe sound pretty self-explanatory, but I've seen profile pictures of people holding up a certain middle finger, and so it does happen. And I would just say be mindful of what you're putting out there on social media. It all can affect your brand and networking. So a quick question, is it best to just delete all my social media accounts when looking for a job? My recommendation for this would be to make sure to keep your LinkedIn account active if you have one, as this is a way for recruiters to reach out to you. As for other social media platforms, the best advice is to keep your content clean. However, if you're concerned about certain platforms, then it may be best just to deactivate them, especially while you're searching for a job. So that would be my advice, but I certainly wouldn't deactivate all your accounts because having your LinkedIn is very important for networking purposes. So next we're going to head on over to the elevator pitch and what that means. And I'm going to utilize the chat here. Does anybody know why we call it an elevator pitch? What that means? If you have an idea of why we call it an elevator pitch, feel free to drop it in the chat. I was just curious if anybody knows. Yeah, so okay, I see Betsy, Robin, great. Okay, because it takes 2 to 3 minutes for an elevator ride. You have a limited amount of time to impress someone. It's a quick way to connect. Yes, great. So that is why we call it an elevator pitch. The whole point of it is Imagine you're lucky enough to run into someone you admire on an elevator. You want to be able to speak eloquently about yourself without sounding too rehearsed, but also not stumbling over your words. You have about 30 to 60 seconds max to get out what you want them to know. So it is that short introduction describing yourself and your professional credentials and interests. We're going to talk about what makes a good elevator pitch and how you can create one. So they're not a one size fit all. Everyone may have their own way of doing an elevator pitch. And what's important is that it's reflective of you. So, it takes practice to create your pitch of what you want to say. But the reason why I'm talking about this during networking is because this is something you want to think about as you're going into any sort of career fair, which I know there's one coming up here soon in about a month. So I hope all of you plan to go to that. And this would be great to be thinking about before you go to a fair is what you want to say to whether it be a recruiter, an employer, somebody who works at the company that you're able to network with. Um, and I should say too that an elevator pitch can sound differently depending on where you're at. And what do I mean by this? So if you're at a wedding or a social event, what you say may sound differently than what you're going to tell an employer during an interview. So the overall goal, though, of an elevator pitch, whether it is more of that social with your friends or a wedding, or whether it's with an employer, is you want to make a genuine connection with someone. And we'll go through the steps. So there are steps for the elevator pitch, but the first one, this is the most overlooked aspect of an elevator pitch, is to be an active listener. So how do you get someone to remember you? How do you, become that person that stands out? It's by having other people talk about themselves. I know that sounds strange, and there's actually a book by Dale Carnegie called How to Win Friends and Influence People. Not to spoil the book for anyone who hasn't read it, but this is one of his main points, is to be an active listener. So people appreciate you getting to know them and listening, showing a genuine interest. And how that starts is before you go on an interview or to an event, it's important to do your research ahead of time. See if there's anything that you can find out about the person that you're going to meet. And I don't mean stalk them or, going into a deep dive, but some appropriate things you can do is if you know the recruiter or the person that you're going to be interviewing with, you can look at their LinkedIn profile and see if you have any mutual connections. Then during the interview, it may be a point of conversation to bring up. So just finding ways that you can build that connection along with during the point of meeting, actually listening and asking them questions is helpful. Okay, so this next slide, you can see here the do your research. So we just talked about that. That's knowing who you're talking to, understanding a little bit more about them and trying to make that connection. And then the next step of the elevator pitch, you're going to see it's very similar to building your personal brand. One of the first steps is going to be, what is your goal? So we've talked about this already, but this is something that I think, at least as students, you may not know specifically right now what you want to do in accounting, but this is the time to really be reflecting and thinking about, if there is a specific goal that you have in mind, let's be exploring it. And maybe you don't have all of the answers right now, which is totally understandable. Maybe you know that you want to do accounting, but you're not sure if you want to work for a public accounting firm, or maybe you don't want to work for a firm at all. Maybe you want to do some type of nonprofit or higher education. So my advice to you is if you're unsure, try to find ways to explore what interests you to see, to maybe narrow down. So going and volunteering, maybe you could do I know it's tax season is almost over, but VITA, that's a volunteer opportunity to get involved with taxes. And that way you can kind of narrow down, do I like this? Maybe your classes too, what you're learning can kind of help you get to a goal of what you want to do. The more specific that you are with your goal, it will be helpful when you're talking to a future employer or recruiter if you can let them know what you want to do, whether it is any of those things I mentioned or something else. So if you're able to, I would take a minute and write down a few goals for your elevator pitch so that as we're going along, you can be thinking about what is it that I want to say during this career fair that I'm going to, or maybe during this interview. So then the next step is once you've thought about this, you want to go ahead and create an introduction. So it can be as simple as, hi, my name is Nicole. I'm a senior at Walsh College, majoring in accounting and business. After graduation, I'm looking to pursue a career in public accounting and eventually become a partner at a firm. This fall, I'm looking for opportunities to gain some hands-on experience in public accounting during busy season. Keep it brief, keep it simple. Like I said, everyone's introduction, what they're looking for is going to sound differently. If you're a freshman, it may sound different than as a senior. Maybe as a freshman, you're not looking for an internship yet. You're looking to hear more about different opportunities or ways that you can get involved and just get more information. So think about it from that point of view, and then you'll want to find a hook or a way to stand out. So this part here, maybe talking about why you're interested in the particular company that you're talking to, whether it be BDO or somewhere else. If you've done some research and you can give them a reason why you're interested or any sort of tidbit that could make you stand out, that would be, helpful in creating that more memorable connection. So this also goes along with providing context and what makes you unique and valuable. And what this could what I mean by this is maybe you've joined a club that you're the treasurer of. Maybe you're a student athlete. Have you had any work or internship experience that could set you apart? And if you don't, that's okay. Like I said, this is the time to really be thinking about what can you join, what activities or volunteer opportunities are out there so that you can be, creating this elevator pitch that's going to be meaningful to you. So I'll give you some other examples. One could be QuickBooks. So maybe you have used QuickBooks in the past and you could talk about that. So I really enjoy working in QuickBooks, but more than that, I've come to love teaching my fellow classmates all of the shortcuts and ways that the program can be utilized. I'm currently working on an online class to help turn regular users into super users. So that would really make you stand out, right? So something where you can talk about not just the software that you're learning, but also that you're finding a way to set yourself apart by teaching others how to use QuickBooks. So yeah, figure out what, that everyone's is going to look a little bit differently, but figure out what type of little nugget makes you unique and then build off of that. And then finally, you want to open up for dialogue and then close the loop. And what this means is it could be just asking them a question. So I'd love to hear what you think are the most beneficial things for me to learn and focus on in my senior year. You could ask, I'm curious, does your company do any sort of initiatives, ESG initiatives? I know that that's really becoming popular right now. So these questions here, there's a whole list of questions that you can think of. The more thoughtful and researched your questions are, the better. So really, like I said, do your research. If there's a specific company that you're looking to land an internship with, I would go on their website. And then as you're thinking of what to ask, really go through and make sure that it is a question where you've, done some research so that you can really show them. But here are some of the questions that we have here on the slide. So what do you think are the most important areas for me to focus my studies on going forward? So this question is more related to showing that you have a genuine interest in the company and you'd like to know from their perspective how you can, best be prepared for the role. So that's one way to look at it. Uh, do you have any suggestions on how I can increase my chances of getting an internship with your company? That also goes hand in hand with you're looking to better yourself to find ways that you can increase your chances of landing that internship. And then for whenever I'm doing phone calls with students, I get asked the question all the time, what does your hiring process look like? How can I follow up with you? Which I think is very important because it shows that there is that interest in wanting to know more about how can you be hired on, what are the steps. So it's showing me that you are taking this seriously and you would like to learn more about that. And you can get creative with your questions. You can ask for what's the best piece of advice you were given as a young professional. So really just, I'd say my biggest piece of advice is make sure you come prepared with a question. What interview, and I tell every student that I set up on an interview, I say, make sure you come prepared to the interview with questions, because if you don't have any questions, it can come off sometimes as that you're not interested or that you haven't prepared anything to ask at all. So don't be afraid of sounding like, oh, if I ask a question, that means I don't know anything, or don't think of it like that. Think of it like you're wanting to actually hear more. There's a curiosity. So that's how I would frame your perspective on asking questions whenever you're in an interview or at a networking event. So with your elevator pitch, a couple of things, just some pitfalls, which I'm guilty of these, right? The using too many fillers such as and like. This is tough. I feel like even the most seasoned professionals can find themselves falling into these pitfalls. So if this happens, it's okay, but practice makes perfect. So as far as avoiding too much jargon, what that means is just whenever you're asked a question, if you're using unnecessary or complicated language to get your point across, it can sometimes come off as confusing to the interviewer or whoever you're speaking with. So try to be clear and concise. And yeah, I say and a lot, but practice does make perfect. So the more you start to really think about what you want to say, the easier it will be to avoid the filler words, because what you say will start to come naturally rather than having to stall and think. Finally, yeah, don't tell too much. So whenever you're asked on an interview, tell me a little bit about yourself. That question, it's so broad that sometimes it does create this maybe urge to want to tell the interviewer everything about you and how many dogs and cats you own, all of these things, which it's maybe not necessary to fill them in on everything. So just make sure that what you're saying is relevant and to the point of whatever it is that you're there for, whether it's a job interview, you'll want to make sure you're sticking to how what you're saying is relevant to that. But it's okay to, every once in a while throw in a fun fact. Just make sure that you're not steering off too much from the original question. And as I was saying, practice does make perfect. So you could record yourself to hear how you sound, but I know for me, I hate hearing how I sound when I'm recorded. So that can be a little bit tough sometimes if you're like me and it makes you feel cringy to hear yourself talk, but it is a way that when you record yourself, you can pick up on if you're using too many words such as like, and then you can look back and see what is it that I need to adjust and change. You could also practice with a mentor or a professor, your mom or dad, if they're open to just listening to you ramble and then talk a little bit. Whoever is there that could maybe take some time out of their day. And yeah, even your Uber or Lyft drivers are great to practice and network with. Okay, so final topic is actually getting to the networking portion. So we've thought about our personal brand. We have created our elevator pitch and what we're going to say. So now it is time to actually go and network. So at networking at BDO means developing, nurturing, and leveraging relationships for the mutual benefit of both individuals. So for us, I'm still, even though I'm not looking for a job necessarily, I'm still networking with my colleagues and connections that I'm making at work. So simply collecting business cards and um going on LinkedIn sounds like a great way to make connections, right? But those two actions by themselves are not relationship building. So, building relationships happen over time. We've all been in relationships where one person gives and the other takes. How long does that last? The relationships that really last are the ones where both people have something to offer each other. So focus on relationship building and not just on, selling yourself. And then does anyone, if you already knew this, you can drop it in the chat, but I feel like this goes into LinkedIn. So the metal link chain. So every conversation is like a metal link. The more conversations you have, the longer and stronger the metal chain or relationship becomes. So yeah, whenever you think of the LinkedIn, it's coming from that thought of a chain and building those links. So if you already knew that, then then good for you. But before this presentation, I did not realize that that is what LinkedIn meant. So how can we use LinkedIn to our advantage? Another big piece of advice, if you don't have a LinkedIn account, I would say now is the time to create a profile. Even if you're a freshman or sophomore, it doesn't matter. It's okay. It's never too early to start networking. So having a LinkedIn is a great way for students to stay connected with future employers. If you're already using LinkedIn to your advantage, then kudos to you. But I'm going to be sharing some tips and tricks for how to get the most out of your LinkedIn account when it comes to networking. So one thing too on this slide, I just want to make note of is who you're adding as your connections. And we'll talk more about this, but be mindful that LinkedIn is a great way to build off of a conversation that you've had during a networking event. We'll talk more about what that looks like and how to send a message, but I just wanted to throw that out there that LinkedIn is a great resource for you as you're going through and building out those connections that you meet. But for your own profile, make sure that you have a strong headline as well as an actual photo of yourself. So this the photo we talked about in the beginning of the presentation with your brand. If you don't have any sort of photo at all and it's just the template that's there, it can sometimes create confusion for recruiters. They may not know if that maybe they had met you at an event but aren't sure then if that's your actual profile. So just to avoid any confusion, it's best to have a photo of yourself there representing you, the brand, and then a strong headline. So this is just showing more about you from the perspective of that elevator pitch that we were talking about. So these go hand in hand. This is just going to be basically your elevator pitch, but you're putting it in your LinkedIn headline. So everyone that goes to your profile can see more of what you're all about, what you're looking for. And then keywords and phrases. So recruiters do use it's called LinkedIn RPS, LinkedIn Recruiter, and it's a way for them to search your profile by using keywords. So what I mean by this is maybe and this could be something when I said earlier in the presentation how I've recruited all levels. When I was working at Robert Half, I used this a lot to find individuals who had a very specific software knowledge. So for example, Power BI. I would search for Power BI and anyone who had that listed in their profile, I could then reach out to and talk more about a role that I have. So if you aren't listing your software or certain keywords in there, then recruiters may not be finding your profile. So it's best to incorporate them. And just as an FYI, complete profiles get 40 times more opportunities. So if that's not a reason to complete your profile, I don't know what is, but just make sure that you're putting in everything that's on your resume. You want that to match your LinkedIn. So courses, projects, clubs you're in, any certifications that you have, you should be putting that on your LinkedIn as well. And even though you're all in college, you may feel like you don't have a huge network, but you do. So it's probably bigger than you think. And people that you can be, utilizing for your network are family, friends, your workplace contacts, any clubs or associations, the members there. So just be thinking about who you actually know and who you can start connecting with. This is an example of a mapped network. So it's just showing the first set of branches are the different categories of networks that people can belong in, like clients, professors, friends, classmates, all of them. And then as you start to fill in with people you feel you have a connection or contact with, you can see exactly where your gaps are. So this person has a lot of friends, as you can see, and they have a lot of coworkers that they're connected with, but they don't have as many professors listed here or clients. So this map is basically just a way for you to see, is there anywhere that you're lacking or where you can start building your network more? So, casting a wide net, connect with a wide breadth of people, including former high school teachers, community and religious leaders, and even your friends' parents. So, that's a way to start building out the network. I will say, though, whenever you meet someone at a networking event, or maybe it's someone who has interviewed you, it's probably best to put a message first before just setting that connection request out, because that way you can remind them that, hey, I met you at the Walsh College Career Fair yesterday. I enjoyed talking to you and would like to learn more about opportunities at your company. So you've reminded them that you have met before. You're now following up with a connection request. So it makes that invite even more likely for them to accept. So when I say cast a wide net, I don't mean go and blindly connect with a bunch of people you don't know, because most likely they may not accept your request. So make sure it's people that you've met with, or, if you haven't, then you'll want to put some sort of explanation in a message as to why you would like to connect with them. And then when it comes to networking, so being a yes person, saying yes to different events that are happening, this is a great way to meet people, even if you don't think you're going to. You never know when that right networking can take place. So just make sure to say yes as much as possible, and that way you're really leaving the door open to building connections. And for me, even as a recruiter, there are times where I get anxiety about events, especially before I was a recruiter. When I was a student, I would not always want to go to these networking events because I would feel maybe awkward not knowing anyone, or, what am I going to say? What if it's, just hard for me to meet people? So those are all common things that can run through our minds when we're about to go to a networking event. And obviously, having a friend go with you can make things a little bit easier. But if you are going alone, remember that you're not alone. Everyone attending the event is there to make connections as well. So people are going to be more apt to want to get to know you and say hello. So don't be afraid to make the first move, saying a quick hi, and all of the tips that we talked about for networking, making sure you know what you want to say beforehand. So networking, it is like riding a bike, and it might be a little awkward at first, but the practice that you do can build confidence. And then if all else fails, fake it until you make it, right? So the more you go to networking events, the easier it will become to do them. And then dressing for success. So making sure, remember when we talked about personal brand, when you do go to a networking event, it is important to be mindful of if there's a dress code and that you are dressing accordingly. So you don't want to be the only one in jeans and a t-shirt at a networking event that is calling for professional business attire. So just make sure that you are following with the dress code, whatever it may be. And once again, here are some other tips for networking. So, one thing I'll bring up here is this: don't be negative. So, if you are talking to someone and feeling comfortable with them, but maybe you just met, it's best to probably not bring up negative conversations, whether it be about a previous employer. Just an example, maybe you worked a summer job at Target and you hated it, but it's maybe not something you want to bring up in that moment, because you never know if that person has a family member who's the manager of that Target, whatever it may be. Try to find a way to either spin it positively, or maybe just not bring up that at all if it's something that could create an awkward conversation. But yeah, finding a similarity, these were all things we had discussed before when it comes to building those connections. And then, yeah, give first, ask later. So, if you have found someone that is the recruiter, or maybe it's a connection with a company, try to see what you can offer to them before you go and ask for any sort of favors.
Nicole, we did just have a comment
Oh,
in the chat
yeah.
too. It's really
Okay.
interesting, just about dressing for success.
Oh,
And
yeah. So, Betsy, I would note on dressing for success: do not wear perfume. Yes. Oh my goodness. So you had lost a job once because the recruiter had an allergy. Well, that is interesting. Yes, that is a great point. So, especially at an event where, there's going to be lots of people, that could be definitely a turnoff. Or if you're in an interview and it's just you and the interviewer, and if they do have that allergy, yes, that's a great point to be mindful of. So, I would definitely stick with not wearing any strong perfumes or colognes. But thank you, Betsy, for sharing that. If anyone else has experiences, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I'd love to hear them. So with networking, this graph is kind of funny because it's showing a straight line, which, that path, and this could be for your career in general. Some people have that straight line path where they know what they want to be. They're able to get there in a straight line, and that just works for them. But we'll say this, it's never a straight line with networking. You never know where you'll meet a connection. So we've all been there where we're maybe not even expecting to have a connection with someone. It just sort of happens out of the blue that you both know someone. Or I'll just say this, whenever I was working at a university here in Pittsburgh, I had brought up that I had a summer job at an amusement park called Kennywood, and the interviewer that was interviewing me happened to love Kennywood Park. And I was thinking, this is so random. And then her son worked there, and it was this whole thing that brought us closer. So sometimes it can be where you just never know what you bring up that could cause, that genuine connection with someone. So that's really the whole point of that graph, is be open-minded to where networking can take you. And finally, there's no such thing as a perfect elevator pitch. So everyone is going to have their own way of doing it. It's going to sound different for all of you, depending on what your strengths are and where you're wanting to go. But just be prepared to speak eloquently and be yourself. So be authentic whenever you're thinking these through. Okay, so that is everything on networking, personal branding, your elevator pitch. I know we have about 5 minutes left. So if anybody has questions or other comments that they'd like to bring up, feel free to do so. And yeah, I'm just going to use the last 5 minutes to really talk about ways that you can get involved with BDO and career opportunities that we have available. So I want to mention our Pathway to Success leadership program. We have 2 different options here. Now, career readiness, which is this bottom one, this is for the class of 2026 or later. So if you are a freshman and you're looking for ways to learn more about BDO, we have our virtual Pathway to Success career readiness event on April 21st. It's from 12 to 2:25 Eastern Standard Time. This is a great way to start getting involved with BDO, hearing more about the accounting profession, public accounting, meeting with recruiters all over the nation. So I will be on this call, but we'll have all of my fellow recruiters talking as well. So great opportunity there to learn more about BDO. And then if you have an offer with us, so any candidates that currently have a future offer with BDO, we are having a local event at our Troy office on May 12th. So this event is going to be a way for anyone who has accepted an offer to come in, celebrate with us. We're going to have a social hour, as well as opportunities to explore our office and meet with other staff. So we're really excited for those events. Finally, our last page here is our opportunities. So this is not every opportunity that we have at BDO by any stretch. I just put some on here that are most relevant for Detroit. So we have our internships for core tax and audit. So we have filled all of our internships for this summer, but for next summer, which would be 2024, and for winter 2024, we do have openings available. So if you are interested in an internship, please feel free to connect with me after this. Also, all of our opportunities for internships and associate positions are on our website at bdo.com/careers. where you can find everything by location and really search for what you're looking for. This last internship, Global Employer Services intern, this is offered at a couple of different locations. So Detroit is one of them, but whenever you look for this on our website, it will say, I believe, Chicago. It will have a different location, but then it will list Detroit as basically another location. So that one, and then our associate position. So this is for if you're graduating, you're not looking for an internship, but you're looking for a full-time role. We have our core tax. We do have this summer, we still have core tax services associate positions, as well as winter 2024. And then we also have our audit for fall. So if you're interested, please feel free to let me know, but that's all I have for today.
It does look like a few questions came in.
Oh, yes, let me.
There's 3 or 4 in there now. I think that just popped out.
Okay. What's the best way to reach out via LinkedIn to employers regarding job opportunities without your current employer knowing you are looking? Yeah, that's a good question. I would say, well, I mean, this happens all the time though. So you could let them know. So I would say if you're reaching out to a recruiter, it is a private conversation. So I wouldn't reach out to the recruiter on any post that's public. But as long as it's, a private conversation with the recruiter, you can let them know the situation that you are currently employed but looking. Lots of candidates are, doing this, so this is not a surprise, but I would just maybe let them know that you are still currently employed, but you're open to new opportunities. And I think there is some I'd have to research this on LinkedIn, but I think there's a way for candidates to also discreetly let recruiters know that they're open for opportunities so that they can be reached out to.
Yeah, there is a setting for that you can
Yeah.
choose to not let your employer see it if you're looking.
Yeah, so hopefully that helps and good luck to you there. Okay, how much weightage is given for experience and certification for internship and associate level positions at BDO? Yeah, so I will say for internships, we are looking for you to, it depends on the actual internship, but for audit and tax, we are looking to see that you are an accounting major. For tax, you can be accounting, finance, economics, but it has to be a related business field for your major. And then experience for on the internship side, we realize that you may not have a ton of experience, and that's okay because the internship is where you're gaining that experience. So as far as certifications go, we don't have any certifications at the internship level that you're needing, but we do look for candidates that are going to be CPA certified eventually, because that will come up if you're looking for an associate role. We do require that you have at least 120 credits to be able to sit for the CPA exam. So yeah, hopefully that helps. And for the associate positions that are full-time, we do typically look for you to have some sort of experience, whether it be a prior internship. If it's an audit associate position, we are looking for you to have had previous audit experience of some point. But it could be as simple as just, a summer internship. Okay. Advice for older job seekers removed from school but with little experience, BA and master's degree. So yeah, I would say at this point, I mean, the networking events, taking advantage of being able to all of the things that I mentioned, even if you're not a traditional student, you can still be using LinkedIn to your advantage. Now more than ever, I feel like that platform is so helpful in being able to really hone in on the company that you're interested in and then who's the recruiter. You can find all of that information on LinkedIn, and then, maybe send a message to the recruiter explaining, hey, I'm at this point in my life and this is my goal. I would love to work for your company, and just get the conversation started. But also going to the job fairs at school. I mean, I think all of that will be helpful for building connections and finding a job. This is important to know as I apply for IT audit intern position and I show the requirements of, okay, so thank you for sharing that. Okay, so I think I got through all the questions. I know I'm running out of time here.
Yeah, no worries. You did a great
This is
job.
recorded too, correct, Liz? And
Yeah,
it was
it's recorded and
sent
we're gonna,
out to everybody.
yep, we're gonna send the
Awesome.
link out to everyone afterwards.
Well,
So
I really appreciate all of the questions and for you all being on here probably during your lunch. So thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. And I hope to connect with everyone after the presentation.